button. So if you have a barking dog or a telephone call or something that interrupts the meeting, can you just hit that till it clears up? Your worship, it's just about 6:30, so anytime you're ready to go, go ahead.
All right, we'll start. Good evening to town council and town senior staff, and for any members of the public that are joining us tonight for what is the first special meeting of council conducted electronically on Monday, March the 30th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. I'll first move to the recording of attendance, and I note that all members of council are in attendance this evening. I will move to the approval of the agenda as written. We'll look for a motion from someone to approve the agenda.
I so move. Edie Bishop.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there a seconder for that?
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Groot. There aren't any questions about the agenda. All in favor of the agenda as written, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. I will now move to the disclosure of conflict of interest on any matter before council in this meeting. Seeing none, we can move ahead. We're having no presentations this evening, no communications, and we're going to move directly to the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. But first, we will go to our Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Spear, who has a couple of staff reports that he wants to bring to council's attention.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'll look at our clerk. You can hear me all right, Paul?
I can hear you fine, Chris.
Okay, we'll go. So council, as you know, we're under trying times right now, and before us is a handful of tender awards that we should consider carefully. I think that we have the ability to move on them, but there's lots of questions that you have to ask yourself before providing and deciding what direction you want to go, which could potentially even be deferring it to the regular meeting next week. So as council, you've been updated on the community volunteers and the provincial mandates almost daily. We will continue to pass along information as it comes to us and look for your direction as we move forward. Before you on the agenda tonight is both the special meeting, of course, our committee meeting coming up after this meeting. In these trying times, it's imperative we continue the business of local government, not only to meet our needs, but to continue providing essential services to our citizens. Included in the package is approval for several projects that have been budgeted for. These tenders were already put out prior to the pandemic declaration. As of today, construction is still considered an essential service. However, in light of the severe shutdown or downturn in the economy, council may want to consider deferring these in order to defer user rates. Staff's recommendation at this point is to proceed as not to fall even more behind in our infrastructure deficit. There are several other items before you that may have to be reconsidered or thought of again under a new light as we struggle with the economic downturns of the event of late, and especially considering that we got notice a couple of weeks ago that this council may still be together over the next year. So we've got the accommodation levy before us. Are we going to burden the providers in implementing this right away versus the need for funding to promote the community? Currently, our funding for the Visitor Information Center is actually funded through that accommodation bylaw or accommodation levy. The wharf user rate bylaw may want to consider partial relief for the tour boat operators as this move along. The municipal plan. A month ago, we were heading towards completion of the municipal plan and awaiting the future council to deal with the secondary municipal plan and the zoning bylaws. Again, with the municipal elections deferred probably up to a year, this council may be able to see all those documents to completion. And also, if you remember, as part of our capital budget this year, we talked about looking at the subdivision expansion, and we had set aside $5,000 towards doing a study on that. We may want to hold off until we see the long-term effects of the economy and see what our housing needs are, raised by the RSC report, which is due as of last week. Is still due in June or July, from my understanding. The mayor may be able to comment on that after. And then, of course, the wellness center. Now, the plan is still to have that completed by mid-fall. We're still looking at options to finance it and possibly improve it, but further discussion may be warranted. I will also go, this isn't written in your report that I had before you, but it's all part of it, was we got the new water bill rates that are coming up in this billing period that's happening over the next month or so, that those are supposed to be going out. And while it won't it be any more for smaller users, the residential users, for larger users, their water bills are scheduled to go up significantly, and you may or may not want to reconsider that. And the one thing that I'm waiting to see from guidance from the province too is the property tax situation. Is that they're saying about deferring the property taxes. Right now, I've never heard that they'll do anything to municipalities, and there was a report that came out from the UMNB earlier today that said our tax money is scheduled to be given to us this year. No changes are planned, but I'm concerned that either this or next year there may be discussion on how the municipalities can share in that. But again, the province isn't talking about that at this point, but looking at the bigger picture and the vast effects this is having on the economy, there may be some pressure put down on our level to deal with this. So with that all before you, I guess maybe before we get into the exact motions concerning all the tenders that we have before you, I don't know if council wants to kind of have a general discussion on how they proceed this, and I'll let the mayor decide on how we'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. I think that I would open it up at this point in time, at least just briefly, to get some reaction to your report from members of council. Council?
Yeah, your worship, if I may.
Deputy Mayor, yes?
Yeah, so as far as the, I guess to start the different projects that we have on infrastructure, I think we could take those one by one with the motions, because there's motions in the package, so we can discuss those as they come along. You know, the comments about the municipal plan, I do think that this council is probably going to be together for a year. We don't know, but I think that it gives us the opportunity to finish what we started. So that makes complete sense for this council, especially the fact that we've been the ones that have been involved with the public engagement since day one. If that's something that we can pass in a year, and I think we easily could pass that in a year, it's something we should take accountability for. The subdivision expansion, I was really passionate about that project, obviously, but I don't think it is the time to do that particular project right now. So I think that that's one that we can put on the back burner. And then talking about the water bills, I think we need to have in committee meeting a detailed conversation on that. I'd like to talk about the wharf user rates, because we know that there will be impacts on the whale watching season. There's a whole lot of stuff. The visitor information center it should be delayed, maybe opening. There's a whole bunch of conversations that we need to have on contingency planning and spending, but I think for the sake of this meeting, I think we should do it during committee meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else?
I guess the only thing I'd like to say, or more at first, a question to Chris is whether, do we have a plan to do hearing of objections over this method? Because even without the municipal plan, there was also I forget what it was, but it was someone wanted to do a variance, I think, and we needed to do a hearing of objections, and even small things like that will need to still go ahead. So do we have a method to get those done?
If I may, Your Worship,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
for those particular things, what was before us was the Nano Brewery and the place 135 Water Street, I think it was. We have talked to the proponents of both of those, and they're okay with delaying them for now. That we've had discussions to the RSC to see what their levels of comfort was, and both of them are okay. They understand the situation we're in, and are just willing to sit on it until things improve for the time being. Right now, the RSC prac is postponed for at least 1 month and won't have, the next meeting won't be scheduled until the 3rd week of April, I think it is, and we'll have to see what's going on by then. But honestly, from my indications from public health, I think everything will be on hold until at least May, that the month of April is probably going to be in isolation again.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Anyone else?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yes,
I
Mr.
tend to
Councilor.
agree with the deputy mayor is perhaps maybe we should just proceed with the motions that are before us at the special meeting. Probably refer to our committee meeting, which is the next meeting, and then we can maybe discuss them in more detail then, but I would suggest right now we just get on with the order at hand for the special meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Drew. If everybody, unless there's some other comments, I think we will proceed. I know that Mr. Spear has one other short report that he wants to present, though, before we do that.
Oh, thank you, Deputy, or Your Worship. I did forget about this one for a second. So, Council, I sent you a notice earlier or last week about the medical assist calls. So specifically, what this is about is the fire departments across the province are having to reevaluate their levels of service. And the fire marshal's office is reminding us that their core services is basically fire and accident. And that in these cases of medical assist calls through Ambulance New Brunswick is more of a thank you add-on than it is of a core competency. And the concern they have is that if we're going to places where we're doing medical assist, we could be exposing a fire department, especially a group of volunteers, to more danger or at least to exposure to COVID. And as we see from the way that this virus spreads, that if 1 or 2 people get it, the whole department could have it before they get back from the call. And so a letter was sent out by the fire marshal's office saying it's okay to advise Ambulance New Brunswick that you're going to be lowering your level of service, but that it has to be through the local government authority to authorize it. And so the fire chief and myself would feel better about getting permission from you that the only ambulance assist calls we'd respond to are major trauma events, which would also include accidents and cardiac arrest, where they become the first responder. Talking to the chief today, for cardiac arrest, he says there might be 2 or 3 a year tops. So it's not like we're cutting our calls by several a month or anything, but it's just that we're going to rely on Ambulance New Brunswick for everything else. What tends to be an issue is where they get lift assist is fairly common, where they're either in an upstairs room or something and our fire department will respond instead of a second group of EMTs. But at this point, places across the province are not responding. And the chief was telling me today that in Nova Scotia, that the fire departments were told not to respond by their ambulance provider, that they'll take care of all those things unless it's, something like dockside or something where they need additional help through a ladder or something. But otherwise, the ambulance service was going to take care of all the calls in Nova Scotia. So what I'm looking from you, not necessarily through motion, but by agreement, is that we can downgrade, and I use that word loosely, the level of service to ambulance assist calls to major trauma events and cardiac arrest only. That we'd notify our local 911 and they wouldn't call us in for those calls in the future until that the state of emergencies have been lifted.
And question? Are they prepared to, are they prepared themselves, like with the proper gloves, whatever, if they have to report for these? These are the two that they feel that they can be safely respond to?
They do, and for those ones, it's considered really a time-sensitive event. And so it had been brought to the volunteer department in a meeting last week, and we talked about eliminating all ambulance assist calls, but the volunteers felt for these very time-sensitive events that they'd prefer to still respond. But they do have all the gear, and EMO has been sending additional gowns, gloves, and face masks so they can respond in a safer way.
Okay.
Question, I'm not sure if you know the answer, but do we know what percentage of calls that our fire department responds to before the EMTs, meaning that I understand it might not be trauma, but say it's a situation where a senior citizen falls and they're home and is legitimately scared. Do we know the percentage that our fire department are responding to first? And is there significant delays, meaning that if someone needed help and our fire department's not there and it takes 40 minutes to an hour for emergency service to show up, is that any risk that would be in this model? It makes complete sense for the protection of our fire department and especially if they're volunteers, but just a little concern over the level of service that we're seeing from Ambulance New Brunswick.
I don't have a hard figure for you, Deputy Mayor, but I had asked a similar question to the chief today, and he said there's only 2 or 3 times a year when they would respond first, that the ambulance tend to be here in a timely manner.
That's good.
That's good.
Council, if anyone else has a comment, that's fine, but otherwise, we don't require a motion, but I would like to get a straw poll here, and so that we can't delay this much. I think we need to move forward with it. So I just ask you, is there anyone who objects to this? Otherwise, I would let Mr. Spear go ahead and implement the new policy.
Put a little thumbs up.
Yes, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Okay, everybody okay with it?
Mhm.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mr. Spear. Please pass on our regards to Chief Terrio. Okay, let's proceed. We will move now to motion FA 200302. Councilor Bishop.
Okay, that's regarding an amendment number A-2 to bylaw 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the council for the town of St. Andrews, first reading. The background to this is, with the recent coronavirus pandemic state of emergency issued by the province of New Brunswick, no gatherings of people 5 or more are allowed at this time. To continue with the business of the town of St. Andrews, bylaw 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the council for the town of St. Andrews, needs to be amended. The purpose of the amendment is to allow for electronic meetings in which the public and council can participate. Currently, there is no regulation in the bylaw to allow for electronic meetings. However, the Local Governance Act, Section 69, electronic meetings, does supersede bylaw 16-03. Provided with this background report is a copy of Amendment A-2 for consideration. The motion is that leave be granted to move to first reading of Amendment number A-2 to bylaw number 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the council of the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you, Councilor Bishop. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilor Akaji. Council, comments?
Worship,
Yes, Councilor Groot.
I would like to amend the motion with the unanimous consent of council, to read that we would like to move to first and second reading of the amendment. We need unanimous consent, but I think this is an issue that is fairly urgent. And I think that we could make an exception here to do first and second reading tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Grew. I agree with that.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Henderson. So we will look for, if there are no other comments, we'll have that motion. We'll vote on that motion. All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, that amendment is passed. So now we will go back to the motion as amended to include that amendment.
Your worship,
Yes,
sorry to interrupt. I had a comment and I wasn't able to sound in.
sorry, Councillor Michelle, please go ahead.
Thank you. In the past, we had occasion once where a counselor was unable to attend and wanted to have an opinion on something read into the minutes. Since we're amending how we do, changing how we do things, if you weren't available and you wanted to have an opinion read in, this might be a good time to add that. So if you're not available and you're not, let's say you're out of the country, and there was an issue, whatever it was, and you wanted to have your opinion read into the comments before the vote, which happened in the past, and it wasn't admissible, I think this would be a good time to consider making those sorts of comments or written submissions admissible. Thank you.
Council, this amendment really only deals with electronic meetings. In lieu of face-to-face meetings. It doesn't deal with the rules of face-to-face meetings. It just adds that in. Any other comments on, anyone else wish to speak on that? Whether we should,
Through you, your worship, if you don't mind.
yes?
Just the only thing maybe, what I could say to Councillor Goumichel is future, for a case like that, maybe we could treat it as correspondence, even though it may not be read during the debate, that it could be brought up as correspondence. So if Councillor Harrison is in wherever, in Orlando for a couple of weeks during a regular meeting and has an item on motion, whatever, to read, he could leave a letter to objector to provide his input on it. That could be read during the correspondence section. And that's one way to take care of it, but I have to agree with your initial. It's not a great spot in this particular amendment to include that, because we'll have to look, because the important thing is these things are supposed to be dealt with when a councillor is present. So reading opinions when the councillor isn't present probably isn't a precedent we want to follow, but we should be able to find a way to make it available so his information can be provided to council and the public through a submission in the meeting.
Your worship?
Yes.
Just to respond to Councillor Goumirchel's concern is, with this amendment, if a councillor is absent, he can still participate in the meeting. So you would not only have the opportunity to make a comment, you could actually participate and vote at the meeting remotely. So I think this might address your concern, Councillor Goumirchel.
Agreed. It just, thank you, Councillor Grew. Agreed that impasse we had in the past where comments weren't read in, even though they were submitted, you'd be able to join by video chat, but still, if you're out of the country or whatever, if you had a written submission, it could be included. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but I think the CAO had a solution that if you weren't available and you wanted to submit something, it would be treated as correspondence and not a word. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goumirchel. I'll leave that to Mr. Spear to follow through on that. All right, I'm going to call the question. I have called the question. Any further comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried.
Okay, the next item, FA 200303 dated March 30th, 2020. The subject is TSA 2020-02, St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing 2020 Tender Award.
Here's
The
what, Your
back-
worship.
Yeah, weren't we
Sorry.
going to do 2 readings?
We didn't
Point
do
of-
the reading.
No, we didn't do the reading, so they'll have, sorry, Counselor Bishop,
sorry.
interrupt.
Sorry,
Sorry, my fault. We will do the reading.
oh, you're going to read the whole thing?
No, I'm going to read it once, the whole thing, because it's not that long, and then I'll read it just by title the second time. This is amendment number A-2 to bylaw number 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the Council of Town of St. Andrews. Be it enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews that bylaw number 16-03, a bylaw respecting the organization and operation of the Council of the Town of St. Andrews is hereby amended as follows. 1. By adding after section 12.1 the following. 12.2 Electronic meetings. A. It is permitted to use electronic means of communication in a council meeting or a committee of council meeting if it allows members of council to hear and speak to each other, and in the case of a meeting that is open to the public, allows the public to hear the members. B. Only a member of council who at the time of the meeting is outside of the town of St. Andrews or is physically unable to attend the meeting may participate in the manner referred to in subsection A or by recommendations by public health officers. C. Except for reasons of disability, a member of council shall not participate in the manner referred to in subsection A at more than 25% of the regular council meetings held in a one-year period, or at more than 4 special council meetings held in a one-year period, unless under extraordinary circumstances. D. A member of council who intends to participate in a meeting in the manner referred to in section A shall provide sufficient notice to the clerk to ensure that the relevant materials may be sent to the member and to ensure that the appropriate electronic means of communication are available, and if the meeting is open to the public, that public notice referred to in subsection G is given. A member of council who participates in a meeting closed to the public in the manner referred to in subsection A shall, at the beginning of the meeting, confirm that he or she is alone. F. A member of council who participates in a meeting in the manner referred to in subsection A shall be deemed to be present at the meeting. Quorum is recorded based on attendance of a minimum of 4 councillors. B. If a council meeting or a committee of council meeting is open to the public, use of an electronic means of communication is permitted only if a notice of the meeting is given to the public that includes the following information. I, a statement that an electronic means of communication will be used at the meeting, and II, the location where the public may see or hear the meeting. And H, notice to the public shall be in accordance with the provisions of section 70 of the Local Governments Act. Read for the first time, March the 30th, 2020. Now I will return to it and read for the second time amendment number A-2 to bylaw number 16-03, a procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the Council of the Town of St. Andrews. Be it enacted that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews, that bylaw number 16-03, a bylaw respecting the organization and operation of the Council of the Town of St. Andrews, is hereby amended as follows. And 1, by adding after section 12.1 the following, and I will read by title, 12.2 electronic meetings, therefore read for the second time on March the 30th, 2020. Thank you, Council. Now we can move forward to FA 200303.
Thank you.
Councilor Bishop.
All right, here we go. We'll try that again. FA 200303, March 30th, 2020, TSA, the subject is TSA 2020-02, St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing 2020 Tender Award. The background, the town of St. Andrews in coordination with CBCL released tender TSA 2020-02. St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing 2020, which closed on March 9th, 2020. These tenders were open at a public presentation at 2 p.m. on March 9th, 2020. Upon completion of the tender evaluation, CBCL has determined that the tender that meets the requirements with the lowest quoted amount was Sewell's Paving at $85,041.26, including HST. For additional background information provided are the CBCL tender letter and BOD comparison. Note, under the state of emergency identified by the province of New Brunswick, construction projects have been deemed essential and are allowed to proceed. Motion that council awards TSA 2020-02 St. Andrews Asphalt Resurfacing 2020 tender to Sewell's Paving for the amount of $85,041.29, including HST.
Thank you, Councilor Bishop. I'll look for a seconder to that motion, please.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Councilor Groove. Comments from council?
Yeah, so I could, Your Worship, do we have to award this since it's already been out to tender?
Under the circumstances, we can cancel it, but I will remind council that all this is being paid by the gas tax fund. So there'd be no savings to the town of St. Andrews by canceling this particular project.
Okay. If we don't do it, we lose the funds, just to be clear, is that correct?
Sorry, Council. Deputy Mayor, I lost about the whole thing you said. Can you say it again?
Yeah, so if we don't do this project, we don't get the funds, is that correct?
We always get the funds. We can reallocate them. But I would suggest to say that for this particular project, where we have the funding and it's not an emergency situation, this is probably the one that you should continue with compared to one where we're either borrowing or taking it out of tax revenues.
Okay.
Worship?
Yes, Councilor?
A couple of things on this one. Just to note, we budgeted $145,000 in our capital budget for road work. So this is well within our capital budget. It might be useful for council in the future when we do come to these tenders to indicate how much was approved in the budget and how much approved funds are left. The other thing I'd like to note is that this amount is well within the CAO's spending authority under our town procurement policy. And the CAO has discretion up to $250,000 for construction projects. So I see no reason for not going ahead with this.
Thank you, Councilor Groove. Any other comments? To call the question then. All in favor of approving the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved. Thank you, Council.
Okay, the next item is FA 200304, March 30th, 2020. The subject is TSA 2020-03, Edward Street Water Main Renewals 2020. The background, The Town of St. Andrews, in coordination with CBCL, released tender TSA 2020-03, Edward Street Water Main Renewals 2020, which closed on March 16th, 2020. These tenders were open at a public presentation at 2 p.m. on March 16th, 2020. Upon completion of the tender evaluation, CBCL has determined that the tender that meets the requirements with the lowest quoted amount was Fairville Construction Limited at $273,205.50, including HST. For additional background information, provided are the CBCL tender letter and BOD comparison. Excuse me. Note, under the state of emergency identified by the province of New Brunswick, construction projects have been deemed essential and are allowed to proceed. The motion is that council awards TSA 2020-03 Edward Street Water Main Renewals 2020 tender to Fairville Construction Limited for the amount of $273,205.50, including HST.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Akaji. Comments from council?
Yeah, Your Worship. I guess it's along the same lines as the previous one. Where my concerns are coming from is with COVID-19, it is the most, the worst economic disaster we've seen. There is many residents and businesses in the town of St. Andrews that are going to have an awful year ahead and potentially longer. We don't know how long this is going to last. And although these projects are, might be allowed as per the state of emergency, the reality is, should we be spending all this money right now when we don't know what the impacts are? Are we going to have to come up with solutions to help residents, businesses? I'm just a little hesitant in a time like this of spending close to $273,000 with the current situation. It's I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering out there how they're going to keep the power on or keep paying rent. And, we've already got a medical center, that's a wellness center that's way over budget. If we don't have to award these projects, I don't see the damage in deferring them for a year if it's not critical infrastructure with the uncertainty of the economic times right now in our community.
Thank you, Deputy
And I
Mayor.
think too, oh, sorry.
Yep.
If in the
Councillor
future they're trying to push the economy a bit, there may be a lot more infrastructure spending in the next year or so to fit these projects under, hopefully.
Solid point. That is a very solid point.
Your Worship?
Mr. Spear, could I just get a comment from you in relation to how this particular project fits in the asset management program? In other words, are we in a critical state with this particular project, or could it be deferred safely?
So in discussion with the operations/asset manager earlier today, it could be deferred. He says we'll probably pay through the nose for it another year, that the prices for this year have been going down. But I'm sympathetic to the Deputy Mayor's concerns. Right now, it's about a $950,000 project, of which let me rephrase that. Within the within the water and sewer department, close to $1 million worth of projects, of which only $125,000 is coming out of the utility and water rate revenues, so we're borrowing most of it. But like the Deputy Mayor, I have grave concerns of what could happen with some of our businesses, and and depending on our future talks with council, may or may not want to do with the utility rates. We may not want to commit to this project until we determine what you want to do, if anything, about the water and sewer rates that are supposed to be implemented this month.
How long could we shelve these?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. With the tenders themselves, there's a 60-day award period. So we could actually hold off until, that would put us until mid-May. So we could have it until the May meeting to award them. The only thing that's, I'll advise that if you remember last fall, council awarded the reservoir rehabilitation project for the concrete reservoir, that they awarded it, but it was going to be started this year. So they're actually going to be bringing their equipment down next week to start cleaning that up. And it's the same company that won this one. So the price is so low because they're kind of have all the men down here anyway. You take that what you will, but you might be handcuffing yourself a little bit if you commit to projects and then at the same time want to drop your revenue or your user rates in order to support the local businesses turbulent times.
Your worship,
Yes,
I have a comment here, and
Councilor Group.
I think it's twofold. Number one is the approved budget for this item was $216,000. So we're already almost $60,000 above budget on this one item. The second issue is that given the COVID-19 crisis, many of our institutions and facilities in town are empty, like the Algonquin is going to be fairly empty. I anticipate most of the hotels are going to be empty, which means they're not going to be using as much water, which means we're going to get less revenue for the water rates, which impacts on this. So I agree wholeheartedly with the deputy mayor that I think we should defer this at this time because there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this, and we don't know what the future holds for us.
And your worship, for now, I think since we don't have to say no, I think I would like to propose a motion just to table this and we can revisit it at the May meeting.
Thank you.
I would go along with
Deputy
that.
Mayor. Could
I
have a
concur
seconder
with
for
that.
motion?
I concur with that. Table it till May.
Right, so we have, I take that as a seconder, Councilor Akaji.
Sure.
All in favor of the motion to defer until the May meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will defer it. Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, the next motion, FA 200305, dated March 30th, 2020. The subject is Arena Storm Separation Quotes 2020. The background, the town of St. Andrews in coordination with CBCL invited quotes for repairs to the Arena Storm Separation 2020, which closed on March 19th, 2020. Upon completion of the quote evaluations, CBCL has determined the tender that meets the requirements with the lowest quoted amount was Fairville Construction Limited at $44,352.22, including HST. This is in conjunction with the Edward Street Storm Tender, which includes separation at the arena. For additional background information provided are the CBCL tender letter and BOD comparison. Note, under the state of emergency identified by the province of New Brunswick, construction projects have been deemed essential and are allowed to proceed. Motion that council award the Arena Storm Separation 2020 quote to Fairville Construction in the amount of $44,352.22, including HST.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second that, your worship.
Thank you, Councilor Group. Comments, Council?
Just same discussion. Is this something that is critical to be done? And is this something that we have external funding for? We're like, just a little summary like we have the previous two.
Long story short, and to follow up with Councillor Grew's earlier comments where he said it was over budget, actually, the Edward Street project was combined with the storm sewer separation with the arena. And so the total was actually under budget. But nonetheless, where you postpone the other one, you might as well postpone this one because in essence, it's the same project.
Okay.
So we table it till May?
We have to have a motion first,
I'll move to table it to May as well.
and I'll second that.
Okay. Council, all in favor, since this appears to be combined with the one we've already tabled, all in favor of the motion to table, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That too is tabled. Thank you. Okay, we will now move to BTH C190-301. Deputy Mayor Henderson.
Yes, so it's regarding the subject bylaw 19-06 tourism accommodation levy, third reading, submitted by Deputy Mayor Henderson. So the background, the following is a timeline for the development of bylaw 19-06, a bylaw relating to tourism accommodation levy in the town of St. Andrews. On August 12th, 2019 was the first reading of bylaw 19-06, a bylaw related to a tourism accommodation levy in the town of St. Andrews. On September 30th, 2019, there was a presentation by the roofed accommodation providers to give feedback related to bylaw 19-06 tourism accommodation levy. On October 21st, 2019, council discussion regarding the second draft of bylaw 19-06 tourism accommodation levy. On November 18th, 2019, council discussion regarding the bylaw 19-06 tourism accommodation levy. On December 2nd, 2019, council consideration to release version 4 of bylaw 19-06 for public information. January 20th, 2020, a presentation by the Chamber of Commerce regarding a proposal to operate the tourism accommodation levy funds. On February 3rd, 2020, there was a setting of a hearing of objections for bylaw 19-06, a tourism accommodation levy for March 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. And then February 10th, 2020, a special meeting of council to discuss next steps with bylaw 1906. March 9th, 2020, a public hearing of objections to bylaw 1906 tourism accommodation levy. On March 9th, 2020, the second reading of bylaw 19-06, a bylaw related to a tourism accommodation levy in the town of St. Andrews. So there's been lots of conversation. The motion reads that leave be granted to move the third and final reading of bylaw number 19-06, a bylaw relating to a tourism accommodation levy in the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you, Deputy. Can
I'll
I have
second.
a seconder, please?
I'll second it.
Okay,
Deputy
thank you,
Mayor,
Councilor Bishop.
Council Bishop.
Comments, Council.
Just a comment for council. I'm wondering if we would consider delaying in the application of the bylaw. So 4A, it says initiate it on or after April 1st, 2020. There is not a big industry for April for accommodations in our community. It's safe to say that not a lot of visitors are coming to our community, which is a good thing. I was wondering if we could bump that date back to May 1st. And what that does is it gives the accommodation providers a month to update their websites, all that stuff, versus just hit them with this change right now with everything their business is facing, giving them 2 days notice. I don't see the big revenue loss in this because there's no revenue to be had right now, unfortunately. So I'd recommend that. And then just something else for council. I did get a call from someone in an Airbnb that runs an Airbnb. They're not currently in town. And they were wondering if we would, again, this is a little bit of a change, and I don't know if we want to do it third reading, but they were wondering if we would consider anyone that makes 30,000 or less, so basically, does not collect HST or whatever, if we consider just giving them $1,000 admin fee instead of, producing records and all that stuff. So it's a little change, but it's more or less quarterly reporting for these small people that only do it a couple times a year. Might be a hassle for the town and themselves to go through when they could just pay $1,000 fee, which would be over the 3% is what they're saying. So, I don't know about that, but I really would like the May 1st, 2021.
Did you say May 1st or May 30th?
May 1st.
Thank you.
Give them another month to get ready.
Mr. Spear, could I just ask you to quickly brief council on the request we got today for information on behalf of the province that came from the Union of Municipalities? And it actually may play into this because that request for information was somewhat suggesting that the province was interested in perhaps a compensation program to municipalities who are suffering losses because of the COVID, losses in business because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that this could relate to would be loss of revenue from a newly minted tourism levy. So, Mr. Spear, could you comment further on that?
Yes, I can, Your Worship, although you pretty much explained it all out.
Sorry.
Nonetheless, the province is pushing us to find out what our costs are going to be. and tried to estimate. Now, there's 2 or 3 of us that have sent back to them because they wanted it by the end of the day tomorrow and saying, well, that's silly that they do all that, but we'll try to do it, or get something to them because it'll be an ongoing question. I don't want to go as far as the mayor and say they're looking at a compensation package, as far as that they're gathering the information to consider if a compensation package should be offered. I would say that it's right now coming from the municipal leadership and nothing official. Well, I shouldn't say that. The Department of Environment and Local Government asked us for the information through these associations. So they're looking at it, but I can't guarantee that it's going to pan out. But I think it's a good consideration. The Algonquin Hotel has provided us how much they originally thought they would be making in it. And so I can roughly estimate how much we are going to lose in April and probably May. And council can debate this, but at this point in time, I think you could probably push this off till June the 1st. And his reality is this thing is probably not going to wrap up till at the earliest of the 1st of May, and likely later than that. And so I don't think we'll be losing next to no revenue if we defer another month. As council also remember that they agreed that a lot of the rates were set at 2% that was originally used by CRTA as part of the volunteer levy. And so the 3% wasn't going to kick in for a lot of these ones in the month of May anyway, because the accommodations had already been booked prior to this. So my recommendation as staff to give everyone lots of time, including us, but also all the providers, is to defer this to the end of May, and that it would kick in on June the 1st. I'm pretty comfortable in saying we're probably going to lose less than $10,000. From what I do understand, and I could be corrected, that a lot of them are still taking the $2 levy that they had booked through the volunteer levy, and I think they're going to forward that to the town of St. Andrews. And see the deputy mayor shaking his head, so he understood that as well. So it won't be like, or it won't be that we're getting nothing. It just won't be the 3%. It'll be the 2% of whatever business they have left.
Your worship?
Yes, Councilor Groom?
Two things. I could support a delay to the 1st of May. I think reluctantly, because I get the sense that if the province is looking at some sort of a compensation package for municipalities, if we enact this on the 1st of April, the clock starts ticking and we may be, I guess, eligible for some sort of compensation from the province because our hotel industry is down, and it would be, they would possibly compensate us for the levy that we would lose. So I wouldn't delay it too long, because there may be compensation coming down the road for this. With regards to the Airbnbs that make less than 30,000, I think we should treat all accommodation providers the same, because it would be very, very difficult to do any sort of a check on somebody to make sure they only make 30,000, and then there's all kinds of problems there. So I think if we treat every accommodation provider the same and have a consistent approach, that's probably the best way to go.
And the other point to that, Councillor Grew, is that by just saying $1,000 is we don't have any visibility, and we can't really understand how big the Airbnb segment is in our community, which would be an important, I guess you could say, finding out of collecting this levy as well. And I agree with that. So I guess just for formality, I'd like to amend just for it to say May 1st, 2020, if that's council's direction. So I'll make a formal amendment.
I would second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Grew. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further comments from council?
Just on the general conversation, and Chris can answer this. When we did the budget, and I know not everyone agreed, but didn't we put money in? Didn't we front end the money? And I know not everyone agreed to spend the money at the front end, but maybe now's the time that when we get up and going to really let the chamber have some money to advertise with. But I forget, because I thought we put the money directly in the budget like we already had it.
I think it's more difficult than that. And the reason is we did have $15,000, I think it was the figure, for the Chamber of Commerce. But part of the discussion was if they were to be the ones to handle the accommodation levy, that they would waive that portion and just take it out of the accommodation levy. And it really wasn't front-ending the accommodation levy, so to say, depending on what view you look. It was to provide them with it, with the thoughts there might be an alternate provider
Right.
who would manage the money. So bylaw as it stands really reads that the money can't be spent till it's collected, so the town's not front-ending it at all. So, but again, that was the assumption was business as usual a couple of months ago. So with the way everything's going, council may want to revisit that during the committee meeting to see how they'd like to go.
Did we have the money in the bylaw though? Or sorry, not in the bylaw, in the budget is what I thought. Like I thought we actually had it in there, but I may have
That's
read that
correct.
wrong.
We did. Just,
Yeah.
if you just give me a second, I'll quickly, but I think it's $15,000 off the top of my head. Actually, it's 25,000. And that was a separate, or it could be a separate grant if council so wishes. It hasn't been released yet because there's still discussions about how the accommodation levy bylaw is going to be enforced. And the current version of it has them actually being the service provider of it. And at a discussion with council, can you guys still hear me? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, yes.
And the last discussion of council was they'd waive the $25,000 out of economic development budget, and that the chamber would just take the money out of their 2/3, 2% that was going to the provider.
Okay. No, I actually thought we had estimated what we would make from the levy and put that in the budget, but I may be wrong on that. So
It was the original thought, but we switched it actually. I guess you could say, I don't know if it was last reading, but we switched that. I thought that we put the 25,000 in for the chamber and that was going to be released to them this year, but that was probably the last time that we funded the chamber. And then going forward, starting in 2021, it would actually come out of the accommodation levy. So I think maybe I got there. I thought we already approved that as part of the budget process.
I'll say, I misunderstood if that's the case, and I'm okay to release the money. I just need council direction. Again, what I explained before was that I understood it was kind of waiting to see if they were appointed the main service provider. But if council wants to release that in the budget, and it's not going to cost us anymore by releasing it. So I could just get direction from council because it was tentatively approved, not tentatively, it was formally approved in the budget, but in discussions after, you had instructed staff to wait until to see how this accommodation levy bylaw panned out. But if council wants to instruct staff, maybe in the next meeting, to release that, I'm sure they'd be glad to have it.
The latest version of the, the version in front of us now with the tourism accommodation levy indicates that the money is collected and then it is only spent the year after it's collected. So the Chamber of Commerce would need that $25,000 this year. And as the deputy mayor said, it would be the last year they would receive it. And then next year, they're reliant upon the tourism levy money.
Okay, well, my apologies to everybody for our misunderstanding in the office here, but we'll get a check prepared the next week or so and release it to them.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. I think that helps, particularly since we now know there's going to be a drastic slowdown in terms of whether we're going to put it in probably later, and there'll be a slowdown because of what's going on. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to going forward to defer this matter to May the 1st.
No, Your Worship, sorry. It's right now we have a motion to amend approved or moved by the deputy mayor and seconded by Councillor Grew to amend section 4A so that doesn't kick in until May the 1st. So if we could approve that by council, then we can move to the main motion.
Okay, that's fine. All in favor of the motion to amend, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none. Now we can go to the original motion as amended. All in favor of the original motion as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried as amended. Okay,
Your worship, can I make a comment before we move to the next item?
Certainly.
This is regarding the Visitor Information Center. Is right now, my sense looking at the COVID-19 crisis, I would be, and Mr. Spear, you can probably elaborate on this more. I would think we would be hard pressed to open any sort of a visitor information center in the next couple of months, given the crisis.
Your worship, I guess I would just recommend this may go to closed session because it will affect the employment of some of our employees.
Okay.
Well, I understand Councillor Crew's concerns, but I'm feeling open isn't probably the best spot to discuss this at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Spear.
I want to discuss that at committee meeting as well, so I concur about a conversation about that, at least delaying, whatever. We'll talk about it in the committee.
Fair enough.
All right. Thank
Before,
you.
sorry, your worship, before you go on, you have to read this bylaw by title as well.
Okay. Okay. I'll read for the third time by title. This is bylaw number 19-06, a bylaw relating to a tourism accommodation levy in the town of St. Andrews. And be it enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews under the authority vested in it by the Local Governance Act and amendments thereto, hereby makes and enacts this bylaw as follows. Number 1, title. Number 2, definitions. Number 3, schedule amendments. Number 4, application of levy. Number 5, exemptions. Number 6, registration of operator. Number 7, collection by operator. Number 8, report and remittance of levy. Number 9, records. Number 10, administration. Number 11, interest. Number 12, enforcement. Number 13, action on arrears. Number 14, offenses. And number 15, effective date. And the effective date has changed. This bylaw comes into effect on May the 1st, 2020. And this is now read for the third time and enacted this 30th day of March, 2020.
Your worship, can I interrupt for just a second?
Certainly.
Sorry to bother you, but it's just because of this new procedure. I just wanted to remind people that if you are watching that you can submit your questions. We'll be coming up to a question period in a few minutes here. So you can either email them to pnopper at townofstandrews.ca or leave them under the comments section of either the Facebook feed or the YouTube feed. We'll pick them up and can ask council on your behalf. Thank you, your worship.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Spear. Appreciate that. All right, we will move on to FA 200109.
Okay. All right, I'm with you. Dated March 30th, 2020. This subject is a bylaw 20-03 Market Wharf third reading. The background. The following is a timeline for the development of bylaw 20-03, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting Market Wharf. On February 3rd, 2020, bylaw number 20-03, Market Wharf, first reading. There was a meeting of objections on March 2nd, 2020. And on March 2nd, 2020, bylaw number 20-03, the second reading took place. The bylaw would join the schedule of fees, schedule of tickets and fines, and the wharf user policy to give more enforcement abilities to our bylaw officer, Wharfinger. The motion that leave be granted to move to third and final reading of bylaw number 20-03, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting Market Wharf.
Thank you. Look for a seconder for that motion, please.
I'll second that motion, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Groove. Comments from council?
Yeah, Your Worship. So to amend Schedule A, would that in the future require 3 readings as well? For clarity?
It would not. Schedules can be completed in one reading.
Okay, the reason I'm asking that is I'm fine going to 3rd reading for today. It's just as this tourism year develops, we all have some concerns over the amount of visitors, and if they have vessels that are literally a quarter full and they're trying to get out and we're hitting them with these fees based on a full boat, it's going to cripple them. So we have to, as the tourism season develops, we are going to have to analyze and understand what that means for their business, because we do not want to be the difference between them deciding to run or not. So we need to look at what the current guidelines, the current situation is in the town. But if we pass this today, we can revisit it at a later time once we understand what their peak season, July, August, September looks like.
And again, I'll just comment, Mr. Spear, I should let you comment on it this time. It occurred to me that the possibility of compensation from the provincial government, this is one area where if there's a real downturn in that tourism sector where we gain considerable revenue from the operators, that we decide to give some of that back, we may well be in line for some compensation from the provincial government if it ever happens.
And I guess I'd agree with you, Your Worship. It's if it ever happens is the important phrase there, about what direction they go. The only thing I will say, council may want to table this at least until next week, just so we can have a discussion on it. It'll make it a little bit hard if we start billing them, because we bill them on a monthly basis, and then decide by August that we're going to give them a credit. And so he's saying, if we don't make the adjustment now, then they won't know whether they're going to run or not. So I guess it's a question of if you want, I haven't heard any boater say that, by the way, or any of the business owners.
I don't think they know yet, right? It's like everybody, it's wait and see kind of what happens. I think we could go ahead with passing this today, but also be open to conversation as the year develops, just so they're aware that we understand that it's a challenging time for all businesses in town. And, although this has been the rates in previous years, we're not increasing it from last year. It's the same rate. We are aware that it is going to be a tough year for them and willing to revisit these schedules if need be.
And certainly we can, sorry, Councillor Grew, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just to be clear, this bylaw is needed to make our wharf charges to be in compliance with the Local Governance Act. Because right now, the way we implemented our wharf charges was through a policy. It has to be through a bylaw. So this is just basically bringing our current policy into compliance with the Local Governance Act. So I think we need to do this so that we're there. And then I agree with the Deputy Mayor that we can look at a deferral reduction as an option down the road. We can do that by a simple resolution as we move forward, but we really have to get this one in place so that we're legal.
Thank you, Councillor Groove.
Through you, Your Worship, I just want to note that this bylaw was originally named wharf user rates. This was changed under the advisement of discussing with our municipal lawyer, only for the fact that it wasn't all encompassing of everything that's been added to the policy or the bylaw. So now it reads as market wharf without the user rate. So it covers everything from schedule of fees to administrative penalties and policy included.
Thank you, Mr. Knopper. All right, if there are no more comments, I will call the question.
Comment, Your Worship. I just would add
Yeah,
that
certainly, Councillor.
in terms of the economic downturn, the commercial fishery and also the aquaculture vessels, everybody at the wharf is going to be potentially having a not good year. So it's not just the aquaculture.
Good point.
Sorry, not just the whale watchers who are bearing the brunt of this.
Thank you, Councillor Gomichel. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, then we will read this for the 3rd time. By title, This is bylaw number 20-03, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting Market Wharf. Pursuant to the authority of the Local Governments Act of New Brunswick, be it enacted by the Council of the town of St. Andrews as follows. 1, title. 2, definitions. 3, fees. 4, prohibitions and requirements. 5, offenses. 6, penalty. 7, enforcement. 8, severability. And 9, effective date. Read the third time and enacted this March 20th, 2020. Thank you, Council.
March 30th.
Okay. I think that's the end of motions for now. Turn to agenda. Hopper, do we have any questions from the public?
Through you, your worship, we don't have any questions that have come in. We do have a couple of comments. I will make this one. It was from Ian McKee. It says, good evening and warmest greetings, your worship, Mayor Naish, council and officers of the town of Thorpe, St. Andrews in Norfolk, Great Britain are wishing us a very efficient and professional meeting. We wish you and the St. Andrews community and residents the best wishes and safety at this time. Prayers and thoughts are with you all during the COVID emergency. Our parish church of St. Andrews, led by James Stewart, will be holding you all in our live services in Palm on Sunday. As have in times before, we will get through this together. Councillor Ian McKee, Community Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you. That was lovely. Our sister community in England.
Other than that, we have no other questions that have come forward.
All right. Councillors and deputy mayors' comments, if there are any.
I think we all have the same thing. We're praying and hoping that this will be short-term instead of long-term, but we hope that everybody is working together as a community and trying to just get through the days, and that we tend to our neighbors through either a phone call or yelling across the road. But our thoughts and prayers are with our community people, as well as Charlotte County, as well as all over the country and the world, that everybody is remaining safe and there are no more outbreaks of this virus.
I'd just like to say thank you to all the community folks, the Kiwanis and the town, and lots of people that have volunteered to phone people that are in homes by themselves. And I think it's a wonderful initiative to sort of reach out to people when they're feeling stressed and have cabin fever, as they say. And so thank you to everybody for your kindness and thinking of others. Thank you.
Your worship,
Yes, Councillor.
I would just like to urge the members of the public to make full use of the free home delivery service that's being offered by the town of St. Andrews. And to make use of it, you can just call the independent grocery store at 529-3831 or Cockburn's Pharmacy at 529-3113. Place your orders and it'll be delivered to your door so you can stay at home and keep everyone safe.
Thank you, Councillor Grew. And I must say that, outstanding job in collaboration with the Kiwanis Club to put this in place and also with the town. It's been made use of. I spoke with Joey Carswell, the franchise owner at the Independent, and he said to me on Saturday that the number of visitors or customers in the store has gone down and the number of phone orders has gone up. So it's doing exactly what we wanted to do. Thank you. I don't have any comments other than the one I just made, so I think that we will look.
Hold on, through you, your worship, I just want to mention to council, when we finish this meeting, you will have to log off. I will stop the recording. I will open up the next meeting. You will have to redial in like you did before, and then we can start the next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Knopper. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Seconder,
I'll second it.
Second.
we're adjourned. Thank you, council.